I want to ask you the same question we've been kind of asking everyone this morning. Do we have any more details about what is in or what is not in, or whether or not there is even a deal to be talking about? Any vibes or signs that we could be getting a tangible announcement later today?
Well, we don't have details yet, but this is the third time in about as many days that we've heard Secretary of State Rubio talk about progress having been made. And these seem to be some of the most upbeat comments that he's had so far. Talking about this was now about 5 or 6 hours ago that he had this press conference with External Affairs Minister Jai Shankar after their meeting here in New Delhi. But talking about expecting in the next several hours to potentially have news, but making clear that that would be announced by President Trump in Washington. And so, of course, now that we're getting into the day on Sunday there in Washington, we're anticipating or looking for signs of additional details and information from the White House and from President Trump. But Secretary Rubio talking about progress having been made, saying he didn't want to get too ahead of things in terms of talking about it, and didn't want to kind of overplay it, but also didn't want to kind of undersell it or to brush it off. Said there has been this progress and that he would let the president speak more to that during the course of the day.
Eric, we heard the Secretary of State say you want this to be the remit of the Secretary of State, not the Secretary of Defense or Secretary of War. It does beg the question, though, just about his level of engagement. You cover the State Department day in and day out, and as we've watched this conflict unfold, it doesn't seem like he has played the marquee or the point role for this administration. We've had Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner, of course, the president.
Even J.D. Vance.
Vice President J.D. Vance going to those talks in Pakistan where you were, I know, Eric, as well. Just help us understand the role that Marco Rubio is playing here as we're trying to see some sewing up of a resolution here of this conflict.
Well, of course, Marco Rubio is the first, as they say, dual-hatted, the first person to be both National Security Advisor and Secretary of State simultaneously since Henry Kissinger about 50 years ago. And so the role that he's been playing, I think, has been more behind the scenes here, really managing the Situation Room meetings. And it's not always the public-facing part of this process that one sees. But for instance, we saw very early in the war that he briefed the press after his briefing of the intelligence committees of the committees of Congress about the U.S. strike on Tehran on February 28th. And so I think his role here has been more behind the scenes and kind of management of the strategy and of that pursuit of the national security goal of making sure that Iran doesn't get a nuclear weapon. It's been more that than certainly the shuttle diplomacy, which we had seen prior to the war by Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner, the envoys, as well as the very public trip about a month ago by Vice President Vance that I was speaking with you all from Islamabad. So I think that's kind of the way to understand how all of the players fit together here.
Eric, we've only got about 30 seconds left, but I do want to ask you if you've heard from the current Secretary of State about President Trump's last Secretary of State, Mike Pompeo, being very critical of this proposed deal over Twitter, saying it seems straight out of basically the Obama administration's playbook. That's the JCPOA, putting the pay the IRGC to build a WMD program and terrorize the world, not remotely America first. Have we heard any pushback or response from the Secretary of State about that today?
Well, yes, he was asked about that, and he really rejected that. I mean, he said that given what we've seen from President Trump, the commitment of the operations and the forcefulness of Operation Midnight Hammer last June, as well as Epic Fury beginning in late February, that really shows President Trump's seriousness about using force and maximum pressure to influence Iran's behavior. And so that's really been his response to some of that criticism we've seen.
All right, Eric Martin, traveling in India with Secretary of State.